Hello. I wanted to take a moment to thank you for participating in Chocolate and Coffee Day for Religious Harmony. Now, as you know, the starting of this event came from the hostage siege in Sydney 3 years ago at the Lindt Chocolate Cafe. That was a really tragic event that really shook us to the core of who we were as Australians. We weren't expecting to have a terrorist attack on our own country. Now, Chocolate and Coffee Day for Religious Harmony has been a response to the reaction of people after this event. Now, certainly it was a tragic event and it's terrible that people lost their lives, and that really hits to the core of us because these people are no longer with us and their families and friends will forever miss them, because they were valuable members of our community. But after that event, people responded in love because there was this fear hovering that there would be an outpouring of grief, of terror, of horror directed towards the Muslim community. That didn't happen. The Australian people responded in love and kindness. They reached out and offered to ride with them on public transport to help them feel safe and loved and accepted in our community. What I realised from that was that, generally speaking, most people are loving and caring, and that we all want to live in this peaceful community where everyone is welcome. And so this is what Chocolate and Coffee Day for Religious Harmony is about. It's about this opportunity to speak up, to have your voice heard, that this is what we want. We don't have to be the silent minority. Now, I want to share with you today a little story. When I was 13, I had an accident. It was the day before my 14th birthday, and I was out in the bush camping. It was my first youth camp, and we were all staying in a tent. There was no facilities. We had to go behind a tree to the toilet. There was no cooking facilities. We had to build a fire, and we had to keep ourselves warm around that, and our running water was a nearby creek. So it was a long weekend, and early on the Monday morning, my girlfriend and I, who was about the same age, we got up early because we were the young ones and we were all excited and having a good time. And we got up and we sat around the fire. Now, we had to cut wood for the fire, but we also had logs that we were sitting on. So my girlfriend starts chopping wood. But silly me, I wanted to sit down, so I went to grab the bit of wood. The bit of wood that she was cutting, mind you. And so I put my hand down, the axe came down. Oh! I remember that moment of picking up my hand and seeing my finger just flopping over the top. Well, hullabaloo. Certainly everyone who was still in bed quickly got up, including my brother and sister. And my hand was quickly wrapped up, and the leader of the camp was actually an ambulance driver, so he was very reassuring and drove me off to the hospital. We get to the hospital and they say, sorry, the doctor's not in yet, you'll have to come back later. Gave me a Panadol, which of course I didn't need because I was still in shock. I didn't feel it. Anyway, so we came back later and when I saw the doctor, and he was this big Indian man. And he decided that for whatever reason that he wasn't going to save my finger, which was still attached, and that it would need to be removed. That was it. So that's what happened. So several years after this, quite some time, I realised that I had developed a discomfort around Indian men. I had developed a prejudice. Now, if you know me, that is completely outside of my character, but I had. So I realised what it was about and how that had happened. But what I had realised is how simple it is for us to pick up a prejudice. Prejudice, prejudging. We prejudge someone else because of whatever misconception we have. Now, it can be like me, it was this good intentioned doctor, but I obviously didn't react nicely to that. So it could be someone who's done something that's not of your liking. They might not think like you do. They not believe what you do. They might do something that you consider completely unacceptable. And from that, we pick up the prejudice that of the whole social group of those people, not just that one person. Anyone we can lump into that description then becomes who we have a prejudice against. Now, this is what happens. While this isn't a religious experience, it still is the same thing, is that we pick up this prejudice against other groups, other religious groups. It can be racial, cultural, even sexual orientation. We pick up this prejudice because they think differently, they act differently, and all we can see is different, different, different. So it became so clear that this is just a simple thing that we don't mean to do. It just comes for some reason. We pick it up very simply. Now, some years later, many years later actually, I was studying naturopathy, and as part of the naturopathic course, you have to do massage. So I was in a class with mostly young women. I was one of the older students in my early 30s, and was 2 men in our group. Now everyone paired up very quickly. All the girls paired up, and the younger man paired up with somebody, which left me to pair up with the other mature age student, who was a man. Not just a man, he was an Indian man. Remember, I had this prejudice. And he was this big Indian, just same kind of build as the doctor had been. Now, you couldn't meet a more gentle, loving soul than Raj. And through my experience with Raj as my massage partner, as my fellow colleague in studies and in homeopathy, my prejudice melted away. So how simple is that? We get our prejudice simply, we let go of them simply, if we allow ourselves. Arthur Aaron, a psychologist at the Stony Point University in New York, has discovered that when we spend less than an hour with somebody who we might have a prejudice against, all those terrible differences melt away, not just for that one person, but the whole social group, which is what happened when I teamed up with Raj. And this is what Chocolate and Coffee Day is all about. It's about taking that time to connect with somebody, sit down and have a cuppa, and allow those prejudices to dissolve, get to know somebody. Now, just yesterday, I met with a gentleman it was a business meeting. It was the first time I've met him, who happens to be an Indian gentleman. And we didn't meet in an office. We didn't meet in a boardroom. We met somewhere where we could connect with each other over a cuppa. So our whole conversation started in a way that we could connect with each other and get to know each other a little bit over what kind of tea we like to drink. And we talked about chai tea and how I love chai tea, and he starts every day with chai tea. So we've started to connect on this level. But it was interesting that as we spoke about what we each do, that this theme of sitting down and talking to people, getting to know them and break down barriers was very much the theme for both of our viewpoints, our perspectives on life and business. And he was telling me that as a CEO, he found that one of the secrets of his success was sitting down with each one of his employees and having a cuppa, because it broke down that barrier of him being at the top and allowed them to see him as an equal. And they were able to confide in him things that were important to them. And then he was able to think about some of the things they told him and then implement things into the business that would help those people feel more a part of their business community and feel like a sense of belonging and importance. So it's just a simple thing. Sitting down, having a cuppa with somebody opens up doorways that you may never have thought possible. So my message is very simple. When you see someone who sparks that something in you, where you see that they're different to you in some way, stop and take another look and see how they are the same as you. Because it's in the sameness that we start to build relationships with people. And from there, we can start to then explore the differences from a completely different point of view, where we're ready to accept them and maybe take on a bit of what they're talking about. So that's my chocolate and coffee day message. So share a cuppa, start a conversation, enjoy some chocolate and change the world. Thank you.